This is the Hacker Noon podcast, and today we have Idan Zuckerman with us, who is one of the co-founders at Upland. Along with him, we have Reza Jafery, who is returning as our co-host. He is the chief blockchain officer at Akoin and one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So Idan Zuckerman and his co-founders have developed this game based on the blockchain called EOS, which is one of those metaverse games. If you guys know about Second Life, it's based off of that, where you have an avatar within the game and there are certain things, activities, and friendships that you can form online. There used to be a time when such games were frowned upon. I remember like there were tales from South Korea where over a long weekend or the government holiday weekend, people were playing for 48 hours straight, 72 hours straight in the cyber cafes, people living inside over there. And then there were reports that some people died. But we have like come a
It's very
long way
casual
from.
slip in.
I
And
tell
some
you.
people died.
I want to be sad about that, but as a gamer myself, like I always believe that gaming should be separated from these things. People dying was a function of something else, but everywhere when you see the news, you see people saying, "Oh, he was a gamer. That's why he became violent. He used to play GTA San Andreas or like whatever." And these are the reasons that I don't like. And I agree, like it might have sounded very, very casual of sorts. I'll be more mindful of that. But yeah, this is where we are like coming from, and we'd like to know more from Idan as to like how you guys built it and what is your vision for this.
Yeah, so maybe just a tiny correction. The game is called Upland and it's built on the EOS blockchain. And Upland it's pretty much a metaverse that's overlaid on top of the real world. Its inhabitants compete and collaborate in games. They earn by trading digital property and running their own businesses, and they connect in local communities. And then, like you said, the Upland metaverse is powered by blockchain technology, predominantly the EOS mainnet. And it runs like a true economy that allows people also to extract value back into the real world by selling the digital assets for fiat currency.
What drives the value of properties within Upland? Is that decided by the users of the game, or is that pulling from like real? If I find a street in San Francisco that I know has really expensive homes, are those homes in Upland also going to be more expensive relative to the places around them?
Yeah, so in Upland, we have the concept of minting new properties. So the properties are only minted on the blockchain once somebody purchases them for the first time and mints them on the EOS mainnet. And then the initial prices, we've come up with a model that like mirrors lightly the real world in terms of differences between kind of like the level of how much a parcel or a property is expensive compared to another one. It kind of like mirrors the real world, but like in a lower scale. So if property in whatever Pacific Heights in San Francisco can cost maybe $2 million, right? In the game, it may only cost 20,000 APEX, which is our virtual currency, for example. But the reason why we have to maintain that initial, let's call it a benchmark for pricing, is that, again, our game runs an open market. So once you bought a property, you can trade it freely in the marketplace, either for APEX, the in-game currency, or for fiat currency, which is coming actually later next month. And then just because we can't create a situation where we compete with our own players or cause their properties prices to go up or down, we have to maintain that benchmark of pricing for unminted properties. And again, taking one tiny step back, our mission as the operators of Upland is to maintain a stable economy and like to support its growth as our player base grow together with the game. So that dictates a lot of our thinking around how we price properties in general, and then how many properties we make available in the general game. So we started out just with San Francisco, Last month, we recently launched also New York City in vanilla mode as our player base grew. And now we're also introducing a small town called Fresno in California, just to enable more options for people who want to play on a lower scale and don't necessarily want to monetize and put money into the game before they try it out a bit. So we like use Fresno as like an easy onboarding place for people who want to just play at a smaller scale. And it still follows the same real world difference in pricing between real world Fresno and real world San Francisco.
That's super interesting. Is it like, would you compare it to Monopoly at all? Like a complex Monopoly? Do you hear that often?
That's not the first time I hear it. And to be honest, we were inspired by that famous board game, but then it's so much more than that. Again, at the base of everything lies property and real world addresses and trading. We do have concepts that are somehow similar to the game, such as you can complete collections. So when you own property in Upland, you also get an earnings on top of that, like a yield on your property holding. And then when you complete collections, so for example, if I hold 3 properties in the same street, or if I hold, let's say, 3 museums in San Francisco, for example, I then get boosted earnings for those properties that I keep in the collections. And then I also get one-time rewards for completing those. So that kind of like creates like an incentive mechanism and some playability around which properties you collect, how can I trade with other players to optimize my strategy, how can I progress in the game, and that's part of it. But then I think that's where the similarity pretty much ends, because there's so much on top of it, because now you can play games in the metaverse. We have treasure hunts and we have live events where you compete against other players or collaborate with them. And then very soon we're going to introduce land development, when you can start building on top of your properties and using those buildings as either homes, but then also run businesses in Upland. So you can run different types of businesses and also earn our in-game currency, which in turn you can use to buy digital assets, and then also finally, if you wish to, sell them for fiat currency and also liquidate your assets as well back to the real world. So it's a very exciting platform that's so much more than just that game, that board game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't mean to simplify it, oversimplify by any
No,
means,
I
but
think,
when you talked about like buying businesses and properties, it reminded me of some childhood Monopoly games.
Definitely. And again, I think our players get it, and there's that instant emotional connection to that game, which reminds people of that. And I think that's a great like launching board. But then people discover so much more beyond that. That's what kind of like, makes it exciting.
Got it. Got it. Just to add on to this and to follow the theme of the year or maybe of the like decade, is there like items such as social justice within your game? Because from what I'm hearing, if I own 3 of the museums, now I have a monopoly. And like in the real world, monopolies are punishable. They are like liable to be broken. What happens in
Yeah,
your game?
I think I would take a different view at that. And I think you call it social justice. I would like to call it an evolution in fairness in gaming in general. So if you think about all of the
Nice.
games run in like almost as a rule of thumb, in 99.9% of cases, games run a pseudo economy where the only participants are the player and the operator. And then there are multiple instances of that across as many players as there are. We took an evolutionary step towards an open economy, where first of all, people have true ownership of the digital assets. So us as game operators, even if we wanted to really hard, if you hold our in-game currency, which is called Apex, we cannot touch that without your explicit permission. As opposed to other traditional games where basically the owner owns that balance and they can do whatever they want with it without asking you. Same goes for any other digital assets. More importantly, players are free. If you put an effort, your time, and your hard-earned money into the game, you have to have and it's funny that it doesn't come up ever. Why not have the possibility to sell those assets to other players in the game? Think about what is true ownership, and I think to me it comes down to one sentence: if you can't sell it, you don't own it. Can you imagine anything in life that you purchased with your hard-earned money, but then you don't have the right to sell it? It's pretty insane. So we're trying to take that evolutionary step forward, and hopefully, if we're successful, we have the whole movement of games, and we're part of games that are trying to do that right now. And if we're successful, I'd love to be able to be in a position where you come to a game, and you have an identical game that has an identical offering in terms of gameplay, but one of them offers true ownership, via whether if it's via blockchain or some other technology, and the other does not. They offer just this traditional old school economy where you can't sell your assets and you don't have true ownership. And now, which one would you play? Obviously, you're going to want to play the ones that gives you back bigger benefit. So we really think the industry is going there, and I think that's you called it social justice. Maybe let's call it gaming justice, but
digital
but
economic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if I may elaborate maybe a bit more about those aspects of the game, I think Upland does, and we are taking it there, where local communities in Upland are going to have some form of governance about their local communities. So for example, if in San Francisco, you'll be able to vote things such as a specific neighborhood, what kind of businesses would it be able to run? Or how many cafes can I set up in a specific whatever in the neighborhood called Dogpatch in San Francisco? So these kinds of things are again, our technology gives us the power to offer these governance tools within those local communities for these aspects of the game that we can delegate to the community. So I think that's also going to be an important role going forward.
Got it. And I heard the word NFTs over there, and you would be surprised to know the sheer number of people who don't even get the word fungibility. And now you guys are dealing in non-fungible tokens. So how would you explain that to someone who does not understand fungibility? How do you tell him that this is a non-fungible token and here's how it works?
So again, I would describe it very simply. If we want to distinguish between fungible and non-fungible tokens, are like currency. So if you take dollars, for example, US dollars, if you take $1 bill and another dollar bill, both of them are mutually interchangeable. Like I can exchange one for one, and there wouldn't be any difference between that. Okay, so these are fungible tokens. That means that every token is the same, and it's just a matter of what's the balance. How many of those do you own? With non-fungible tokens, every one is unique. So again, for example, in Upland, property parcels, the addresses and the properties that you buy are non-fungible tokens. So each one of them has some unique attributes. It has a unique address in the world. So for example, 75 3rd Street in San Francisco, it has a precise geolocation in the world. It has boundaries. And then the property next to it, although it may be 77 3rd Street. Although it has the same street, it may be the same size, but these are different locations and they are mutually exclusive. So you can never interchange one with the other. If you own 75 3rd Street in Upland in San Francisco, you are guaranteed to be the only person in the world that owns that. And that's it. So if implemented correctly, the game doesn't have even the technological option to create another type of that specific address. And that's what makes it non-fungible, meaning that it's unique and it can't be interchangeable with a different token of that type. Now, it may sound a bit overwhelming, but what I often like to say about non-fungible tokens is the technology gives you an incredible power that wasn't available before blockchain technology emerged, to take digital assets and almost give them like a physical instance in the real world. Because before that, if I had a digital asset, let's say whatever, I have a cute little digital llama, and I give it to you as a player for whatever reason, let's call the game Lamaville. And then now you theoretically own it, but that's not the case, because I, as operator, this is stored on my server. So basically, you don't really own it. I just let you use it. If I decide to go and like press delete or just decide on a whim that I'm now going to associate the ownership of that asset to Reza instead of to you, then at that point, you no longer own it. And then blockchain allows you to create these physical instances of digital assets that once somebody is the owner of it, again, and I have to stress, when implemented correctly, when somebody owns it, that's it. He could never be able, nobody will be able to take it from him without his explicit permission. And that's basically the essence of it. So I don't know, Reza, if you have another better explanation for NFTs.
No,
maybe.
I thought that was great. I really loved your explanation.
Come on, guys. I have a very simple explanation and everybody would get it. I would need 5 to 10 second stops. Do you guys believe in God?
Ooh,
No.
But yes, let's go with
Okay.
God is fine. Right? I guess like you guys had that covered. Like I am a Hindu, so for us there are like multiple gods, but I guess for the Abrahamic religions, God is one. So let's like go with one, and let's assume that you guys believe in God. So the way I see it, man was made in God's image, right? So essentially, if you are to explain the non-fungible tokens to people, just tell them that we are all non-fungible tokens, except when you guys are twins.
It's an interesting
No, so let me correct you. So I would say twins are semi-fungible tokens.
So
there are multiple instances of the same NFT. So
I'm sorry. Yes, Reza.
No worries.
Yeah.
Sorry, as you said something really interesting about like you're taking a digital asset and giving it a physical instance. What are your thoughts on like the other side of that with like some of the stuff we were talking about before, like taking art and creating an NFT to represent art? And I don't mean taking like a picture of the Mona Lisa and being like, okay, this is an NFT of the Mona Lisa, but rather individual independent artists creating art and like turning it into an NFT. I'm sure we've all seen some of the debates going on social media and Twitter with people like Peter McCormack going on and saying, if I screenshot your NFT, I now own your NFT. And argument. Well, like, what are your thoughts on the whole creating a digital instance of a physical asset?
Yeah, I think that there are two parts to that answer. I think the first part, again, so we're gonna heavily invest in Upland in what you mentioned, digital art, and I think it's gonna be an amazing new and emerging space. And forget for a second the fact that you can copy and paste a digital screenshot, right? You can, by the way, you can do the same for printouts of digital art or whatever, or copy like and imitate artwork, and that's fine. But the question is, what are you able to do with that NFT? And I'll give you one very good example. So Upland is gonna host a type of business that is called art galleries, okay? And for that type of business, we're gonna implement this thing that we call an NFT gateway into Upland. So you'll be able to take an NFT from outside of Upland and upload it into Upland. It means you're gonna put it in a custodian address, and then in Upland we'll create like a representative token for that, and now your NFT is in Upland. Now the question is, what can you do with that token? So in Upland, for example, you'll be able to take digital art and decorate your home in Upland inside with digital art and display it for other Uplanders, which will be able to come and leave comments on your art piece, etc. And then also you'll be able to take it into art galleries and trade it with other Uplands, again, etc. Now, at that point, we can create an ecosystem that gives you the confidence that this NFT is indeed unique, okay? And because each gateway that we'll implement is going to take care of that and make sure. In other words, ignoring for a second about tokenized real-world assets, there is a real market here and real opportunity to take digital art and with marrying it with NFTs, make it just much more valuable by giving people things that you can do with it beyond just holding and collecting it. So I think that's one aspect. And then another aspect as to tokenize assets, and I know this is like a really interesting topic, and this is also a topic that we are like dealing with in Upland as well, is that again, the question is, what is the utility that the token provides to you? So it can be just ownership, for example. So I can imagine a platform that takes something like, let's say, an old-timer car. It's an old-timer Porsche that lives in a garage in Germany, for example. And you can tokenize it and sell pieces of ownership to people. And whoever owns the token can trade it and sell it to other people. And it represents a piece of ownership for that car. So your value is dependent, right, on the platform that implemented that token. So if it's a respectable, entity, backed by a heavily regulated rules, then you have a lot of trust in it, then it's probably valuable. If it's some crook that said, hey, I tokenized the car and go buy my tokens, yeah, not so valuable. Maybe it's a bit fishy and risky. But now, what if I said, okay, now you have this tokenized ownership, and let's say it's a respectable entity that issues those tokens. And now I said, hey, anyone who has those tokens can bring those tokens into Upland, and rather than just holding it as an investment, now you have a representation of that old-timer car in Upland, and you can use it to drive around between cities and car race with other players and just show it off in Upland via a 3D model of that car. Now it becomes a bit more interesting because now you cast a utility into it. And if you compare it, for example, you mentioned the Mona Lisa, right? So yeah, if I had a token for a Mona Lisa, and then I can, I could create a replication of the Mona Lisa, a digital replication, and sell the token of it. But if I wanted to use the Mona Lisa in Upland, then we as a platform would make sure that only the Mona Lisa can be claimed to be the Mona Lisa, right? So we would have whatever kind of partnership with whoever issued those types of tokens. So they can use them in our games and still be sure that this is the original and legit work. So I hope that makes some kind of sense.
No, absolutely.
But again, the short answer is it's the utility that you cast into those tokens that makes it as interesting.
About the Mona Lisa, so let's assume that somebody comes to Upland and says that they want to tokenize the Mona Lisa. Will Mona Lisa now become a part of your system? What I want to get at is, the Mona Lisa have to be kept in will it have to be kept in a safe by you guys, or will it stay somewhere
is there
else?
any physical ownership tied to the digital?
Yes, absolutely. So the only way we will allow ownership of real world assets that are tokenized is via a third-party custodian. We're not going to even attempt to be that custodian. That's not our specialty. We specialize in creating metaverses and games and experiences for players. And there are companies in the world that specialize in holding custody of these types of assets. And they have all the regulation clearance, whether it's in the European Union or the US or worldwide. And they have the right insurance and whatever. So 100% this is going to be done by third-party trusted provider that we feel comfortable.
Got it. I guess this is the reason why the Mona Lisa would never be tokenized, because it's in got it. And
yeah, that is something I feel like when people talk about tokenizing certain assets, there is you have someone involved. I remember when tokenizing assets was a buzz in institutional circles, and there was a period of time where I was getting a lot of calls from people who were like, hey, I need to tokenize this real estate portfolio, or hey, I want to tokenize this cannabis farm, how do I tokenize this? And while it is it was a little bit crazy, 2018 2019 time frame, I do believe that we have to, in the NFT space, learn or take something from that, and that you have to have some form of ownership over what you are creating an NFT for, if it is a physical asset you're creating a digital instance for. And when people are just screenshotting things and then making them into NFTs, that kind of creates this little convolutedness that I think right now is making it a little more difficult for some people to start really buying into this concept of non-fungible tokens, is just because of the way it's being executed, not by any particular company, but by users. if we look at like Rarible, it's not Rarible that's going and like screenshotting different things and like creating NFTs out of them. It's the users who have the freedom to upload whatever they want and mint whatever NFTs they want. And so they're going and screenshotting Twitter profiles and stuff like that. It's crazy times.
Absolutely. And I think like the litmus test here can be, again, when you judge a platform, when you judge an NFT offering, ask yourself, is there a utility being provided here? Is there a benefit being provided here beyond pure speculation? And if the answer is no, yeah, maybe think a couple of times before you spend money. But if you can see the value, and again, you can never take out speculation from the game, because anywhere that you have a valid value proposition and you have the opportunity to sell your assets, speculators will come in. You can't avoid it. But there has to be a value beyond speculation for this to be legit.
And I guess Reza has a few questions on the blockchain itself. We had some in the interview stages. Yeah.
Why? So there was a period of time where I was absolutely obsessed with blockchain games, and I may or may not have spent an irresponsible amount of money on crates for the release of several different games in my heyday. So I'm got a few questions about Upland. First, why did you choose to go with EOS?
Yeah, we started thinking about Upland back in 2018. And the most natural choice for us was Ethereum, and that was the first thing we looked at. And again, this was all on the premise in our minds that the real world address is like the ideal NFT. Just in terms of things you can do with it, it's kind of like amount of playability, and just the fact it's non-fungible nature. Just the fact that you can create different series because it has different attributes that can relate to other properties, etc. And so we looked at Ethereum, and again, we out of the three co-founders of Upland, we come from the gaming space, from the casual gaming space. And when we look at Ethereum, pretty quickly we figured out, one, in order to get started playing Ethereum-based games, you have to have your own identity funded with Ethereum. So it has to be around, and again, this was just at the days of MetaMask, before we had like more elaborate wallets. But then you have to figure out how to install MetaMask. You have to fund it with Ethereum, and then you have to. By that time, you probably lost 99% of your potential addressable market in gaming. And then, even if you managed to bridge that, once you wanted to do a transaction, you had to pay gas. Now, blockchain gamers may be used to that, and that's fine. And I think, and obviously, if you don't fund the computation power for blockchain, you're in a bullshit blockchain, right? You're not really in a public blockchain. It doesn't drive you any benefit. So there has to be compensation. But on the other hand, think about one of the very simple experiences that every gamer expects is collecting your bonus, right? And if your bonus coins are kind of like represented in cryptocurrency, like they are in Upland, then imagine every time you collected the bonus, every 3 hours you come into the game, you collect your bonus, you have to pay whatever, even if it's 5 cents transaction fees, which can be a lot more than that. That's a no-starter for any gamer. And then you lose another 99% out of the 99% you already lost. So it was really clear for us that Ethereum isn't going to cut it for our use case, for what we were trying to build. And that's when we explored other blockchains, and EOS pretty much on the technological level, it met all our needs, because EOS does allow you to stake resources for your players. So that means that I can basically fund those activities of our players, which enables me to treat EOS as part of my natural back-end stack. So the same way I treat my AWS costs or Postgres costs or whatever hosting costs I'm paying for the backend. So it allows me to compile these costs into the Upland business model, and then still offer my users a very simple, very casual gaming experience that's not complicated and doesn't have these friction points of having to monetize. There are some other reasons. EOS has an elaborate permission scheme, which kind of enabled us to develop really cool and innovative solutions that kind of allows us to again, to meet that end result of offering a really simple onboarding experience for our players, and almost invisible identity and key management function on the front end, while still adhering to the benefits of true ownership. So for us, for example, we'd never have access to private keys for players, and on the other hand, players never have to mess with private keys. And that was made possible by EOS's permission scheme, which is very innovative. Then I think the last thing is, once we focused in on our solution, we were also able to raise a seed funding from EOS VC-based venture capital firm. Ours is called the FinLab out of Frankfurt. So that also gave us eventually access to our funding, and that got us started as a company. So I think that's pretty much the long answer for your question.
Awesome. Do you see a lot of people coming into the user base that aren't from a crypto background? Do you think that it's working? I guess
Yeah, we know that it is. So keep in mind, so we're still in open beta. We're still developing the game. The game is not even complete. We're still waiting for things like property development, business licenses, just so people can actually create more engagement, more fun in the game, more activity. But even so, for now, even though the low-hanging market for us is still people that know and understand the value of blockchain technology, because it's just an easier sell in terms of like, why is it valuable to play a blockchain-based game more than it is just a traditional game, right? So blockchain people get it. That's why it's easier for us to onboard them. But we've definitely seen that we were able to bring in gamers who had nothing to do with blockchain, who had no idea what, other than maybe they may have heard about cryptocurrencies, but they don't know what blockchain is, what it gives them as a benefit. They don't know anything about NFTs. We managed to bring those in, and actually some of them became some of our most valuable players in terms of both engagement and also how much skin they put in the game. And it's really amazing to see, because now we're in a position where, and it happened more than once, more than twice, and more than a dozen of times, we brought in gamers who had no idea about blockchain and NFTs. They got excited about the NFT space because of Upland, and then they like also moved on to other places like trading cards on Wax and other platforms. And it's pretty fun to see. So we've proven that beyond doubt. There is kind of like a crowd out there who not only is excited about our game, but also through our game can get excited about blockchain and what it means.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think blockchain games have a huge value as like outside of the intrinsic value that they have. I think that they have a huge value as on-ramps for people into the space. There's been a lot of games or blockchain games that I've played where I've heard like similar sentiment to what you're expressing, where it's you'll find a really like weird mix of people where you have like crypto enthusiasts and like some people who are trying to figure out like how the hell to get some like currency onto the internet to use in this game, and there's just like such a wide variety of people who are starting to get into these blockchain games, and it's really cool to see how you guys have eliminated some of the barriers to entry for the casual gamer or the average user to start getting or start becoming a part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, and there's also the reverse angle of it. So now, basically, you can take all the, so I think it's like the number that floats around is there are 20,000 or so blockchain enthusiasts that kind of like own and trade NFTs in the industry. So now that group of people, it can be more, it can be less, they can come into Upland, they can bring in their NFTs, even if it's from outside of Upland. So if it's a crypto kitty or whatever, it's like a racer game, you can bring in that NFT, and hopefully next year we have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of daily active users. And now they can make that offering to that market that lives inside of Upland, which is hopefully like far bigger than the crypto trader market. So it works both ways. It's also it's bringing in those people and introducing them to blockchain, but also we can bring in all the crypto NFT traders and give them a much larger market to trade with and pitch whatever they're selling to, and why people should own it inside of Upland by running an NFT gallery inside of Upland.
That's awesome.
how far do you think we are from the day when we might see one of these blockchain games on a gaming console such as the Xbox or the PlayStation 5?
So first of all, I think it's probably, I would give it 2 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are some companies working on some AAA games that have some blockchain elements
Yeah.
behind them. So, those games will debut eventually, and we'll see how they do. I think I think it's inevitable at the end of the day. Again, today we are collectively in the blockchain gaming space. We're innovators, and we have to create. And one of the toughest messages is, how do we deliver the benefit that blockchain technology gives to ordinary players? Like, we need to be able to convince them in very simple ways why they should play games that use blockchain and true ownership concepts, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to games. And I think that will happen as more and more games evolve, as technology evolves, as games more like us that kind of like empower people with these benefits through a simplified experience. I think it will naturally happen just because the benefit is there. It is substantial. And it's not always easy to explain it to ordinary people. Even for me, I got into the blockchain space only like in 2017. Like, the only thing I knew was cryptocurrencies before I knew it. And for me, it took 6 months just to grasp, okay, so this is what it means. Oh, and this is what it can mean to the gaming industry. Okay, there's definitely something here. So we just need to find a way to communicate that value proposition to ordinary gamers, and then it will happen naturally.
Just out of curiosity, are the AAA blockchain game, is that public information, or is that something you got to keep close knit at the moment?
Oh no. Again, one that I know of is a company called Mythical Games. You can look them up. They're doing a game, I think, called Blancos or something like that. Yeah, and I'm sure they're not the only one.
Yeah.
How would you define AAA in that sense then? Because when you say AAA, I think of like Activision, Blizzard.
Yeah. Okay, listen. First of all, I think we need to define what does it mean to be a blockchain game. Very
Open
big,
economy, maybe player-owned economies.
Right. So player-owned economy. Hold on. What's Second Life? That's been around for a decade now. That's an open economy, right? So again, it's a more complicated question. Again, is what do you use the blockchain for? And again, some games are purely or almost purely implemented via smart contracts on blockchains, and that creates a whole new, a whole different set of problems. By the way, because again, you have regulatory problems like how do you avoid anti-money laundering regulation? So how do you avoid terrorist groups from coming in and monetizing on your assets? And then how do you prevent bots and from operating in that kind of like purely decentralized game? So I think that's one side of it. And then the other side of it, you can utilize blockchain, but not really, but still control the private keys for players, for example. So you can claim you're a blockchain game, but do you really drive value? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. So it's a spectrum at the end of the day, and it depends on where are you on that spectrum, and what kind of value are you driving for your players. Again, I dream of the phase where we get to the point where nobody cares about blockchain or not. It's just like a part of your backend stack, and it's just about what value are you driving to your players. So yeah, if the value is true ownership, meaning that the ownership of digital assets is separated from the operator and the power is given to the user, and you can trade freely your assets in the market, and you can liquidate back for fiat, okay, that's a solid value proposition, right? So you can work with that. So I like to think of it less in terms of what is the technology, but more in terms of what does the user get out of it. So that's why I'm like, when you ask like what kind of blockchain games are AAA, it's a very vast question. Yeah.
No, definitely. But to answer your question, Reza, so Dapper Labs, the guys who were behind CryptoGetties, they have partnered with I guess NBA, and they are like coming up with a game. So if it's Dapper Labs and it's NBA, I'm pretty sure it might be like AAA. Not exactly in the like lines of Activision or an EA Sports, but it might be huge. They're calling it Axiom Zen or something like that. I forget the names.
I'm like hesitant to jump too quickly onto the bandwagon of these like sports related NFT. And I see that as like the easiest correlation. People love trading cards.
Yeah.
That seems like an easy jump, but
Yeah.
I don't. It doesn't really hit home for me personally. I think, and like I've seen a few other NFT companies that will do like partnerships with the NBA or NBA and release bobbleheads or cards, and I just don't really see enough increased value between the NFT version of that and the actual like physical version of buying the cards just yet. I don't think that there is enough to bring the people who are trading these cards right now into the crypto world from the way that it exists currently. Personally.
Yeah. Although I will say probably collectible cards are probably one of the spaces that do make sense for NFTs. And I think also like stuff like comic books or stuff like that. And again, but it highly depends on the utility, right? So you have to have the right utility, the right place that can showcase and verify it and just prove the legitimacy of your ownership. And then I think it makes tons of sense. Because
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So then does the legitimacy of NFTs depend on the legitimacy of the marketplace? Do we need an Amazon of NFTs for NFTs to become more legitimized in the like general public?
I don't think so. I think it's more about, so again, taking a step back, yeah, definitely the more marketplaces and the more like legitimate names operating this marketplace, yeah, that would be a huge benefit. But I think it has to do more about the brand behind it. I'll give you an example, right? Topps released Garbage Pail Kids cards on Wax. So what is your conviction that Topps will not release the same cards on a different blockchain platform? You know, probably it's pretty high because it's a reputable company and their partnership with Wax is legit. So you can put your trust in the fact that if they put a pack of cards there, they're not going to put another pack of cards in another blockchain and sell that as a different ownership. Yeah. So I think that today an NFT is a piece of code, right? It's a database entry in a public decentralized ledger. The value that comes out of the NFT depends on who issued it, what was the context, what is the utility, etc. So you can't like just call it an NFT is a technology. It's the implementation, who does that and how they do it, that casts value into it, in my mind.
Has anyone tokenized reputation yet? That might be like a logical next step from, because that's really interesting what you said. Like, how do you believe that Topps will create the same deck on another blockchain? And it really does come down to the reputation of the artist or like of the creator of the brand. If we take this like same example and apply it to what we were talking about earlier with digital art, a lot of it does come down to the artist. Do you think this artist is just going to recreate this art and sell it on the corner, for example, or sell it to an art gallery as well? And it just becomes it's really interesting. I feel like we're just at the beginning of this industry right now.
Idan, like from a legal perspectives, where do like NFTs like sit? The way I see it, and I see it from a very far off thing, is that they seem like derivatives to me.
Sorry, they seem like, I lost you for a sec.
They seem like derivatives to me. So that makes them securities.
Derivatives.
Yeah, derivatives. So that's how I like look at it. But what's your take on it? Like, how do they become a utility token and why not a security token?
Again, so like you said, it depends on the utility. So if they have utility, then they are digital assets, which is completely different than derivatives or currency or etc. And they have a completely different way that they are regulated. I'm more familiar with US regulation, less familiar with worldwide. Right. But again, there's a clear distinction, and the distinction is driven from the utility. So if it has utility, it can be considered an asset or a digital asset, and not a currency.
Got it. So in the US, is your token, the UPX, is it like considered a utility or is it considered a security?
Okay, That's a great question, and that's one of the biggest hurdles we've overcome in our holistic solution in Upland. So Apex is strictly an in-game utility token, but the reason it is that is because we don't allow people to trade Apex outside of the game. So you can so Apex is a digital currency. You have ownership of it as an owner, meaning that I can take it away from you without your explicit permission, but you cannot take it on an exchange and trade it with another people outside of the game. That is a serious restriction today for our players, but because we impose this restriction, this in turn enables us to allow players to sell their digital assets, such as properties or buildings or whatever NFTs they will have in the game. Then they can sell it back for fiat currency. And by the way, in order to do that, you also need in the US, it's called money transmitter license. It's a whole different headache that you don't want to get into. But again, it's a part of our specific holistic solutions. And there may be different permutations of different solutions that meet regulatory requirements in the US. But specifically about Apex, what makes it a utility token is the fact that it's not tradable outside of Upland.
And how does your minting process works? Like we have heard this word, I guess, like multiple times. It would be helpful to know more about it.
Are you asking about the Apex currency or the NFTs? Or
the
Apex currency. So we have a very elaborate economic model. You can read about it a bit in our white paper. But essentially, there are two pools of Apex that were pre-minted. One is called the community pool. One is called the Upland pool. The community pool is used to circulate Upland inside of the game. So, for example, when somebody buys a property and pays Apex, the Apex that they pay go to the community pool. And then the community pool, in turn, serves to fund all the yields and bonuses in like a symbiotic economy. And then the Upland pool is utilized only for the purpose of us as operators to sell Apex to players in Upland. So again, it's not a traditional model. By the way, one of our co-founders is like an economist. He has a PhD in state-run economies, and he kind of like masterminds the economic aspects of Upland. But it's not really straightforward. I can speak about it for 30 minutes easily, but that's like the high level of it. And then minting of the properties is just putting them on the blockchain again. And again, there's a smart contract that does that. Our properties, NFTs, are very, very cool because you can utilize only the blockchain to determine their precise geolocation in the world. So that's kind of like verifiable without having to depend on Upland at all, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool technology.
Got it. And what is your how many users do you get at your peak time of the day? What's that number look like?
I think we just recently had a peak of 4,000 daily active users. I can't recall the hourly or the minute by minute. I think we have, I think simultaneously we had probably 300 to 500 players. And it very depends on, sometimes we run a lot of live events where like all of the players converge and then play, or they compete, or they have some kind of a challenge that they need to do. So that creates a bit of a peak. But again, keep in mind, looking at, again, in my previous company, I ran a game that was 100,000 DAUs, right? Today, at our peak, we are less than 5,000 DAUs. We are still a tiny game, and we're still in open beta. I'm almost embarrassed to speak about the kind of like the scale of this game because we're just basically getting started. So ask me again next year, and I'll have a much more exciting answer. For a blockchain game, it's still...
Exactly. That's what I was going for, Idan. We are already impressed. 1,200 users and the Ethereum blockchain. If you guys have 4,000, it speaks volumes about the EOS blockchain itself, and it speaks volumes about what you guys have and what you guys have as an offering. Both of these are really good numbers. And of course, we'd love to be here next year, see how that goes.
I'd love to come back and hopefully I can beat my own expectations.
Definitely. Reza, do you have any final questions?
Yes, I have. Do you have any insight into what your player retention is? How are people coming? How long are you maintaining a player right now on average, would you say? Or...
Yeah, so I can tell you that all of our player cohorts we launched a closed alpha back in June of 2019. All of those cohorts are still active and playing. So not 100% obviously of those cohorts, but every single one of those are still with us and active. So we have today, if you compare us to traditional games, our short-term retention is not that good. So it will be like mid-20s to 30s, whereas a good game is considered between 40 and 50 day one retention. I don't want to worry with numbers, but our longer term retention is really good, even when compared to traditional games. So once players stick around and understand the value proposition, then they retain for a long time. And I like to say that we have a superpower that enables us to call our players back even if they are dormant. And I think the reason for that is once you understand that your assets carry tangible value, you will always get excited about your portfolio with innovations and with new features and with stuff like that. So we see time and again, we're able to, even people that became dormant, whether they got bored or they didn't have patience to keep with the game, if we introduce a new feature, we have this ability that allows us to call our players base back. And this was part of our hypothesis, meaning that once people understand that they'll be able to sell their assets in the market if they choose to do so, and they perceive that they have tangible value, they no longer consider their investments of time and money in the game as sunk costs, and that creates eventually bigger engagement.
And
That's awesome. Sorry.
It's okay. Go for it. If you have another question.
Oh, nothing. I'm done. I was just basking in the answer, really.
Right.
Just soaking it in.
Perfect. And I was trying to know more about what are the geographies from where a lot of these gamers originate, according to you and the stats that you have.
Yeah, so if we talk about specifically about Upland, our user base is predominantly US based, and then probably next in line is Western Europe, so specifically UK and Germany. And then we have also, the rest of it is worldwide. We have a lot of Australia, some Asia. We have a pretty significant in Central and Southern America population of gamers. So it's pretty much worldwide, other than the US, which is like a big chunk, and UK and Germany.
Got it. So with that, we'd like to bring this to a close, and we'd like to wish you guys, of course, there is that event that you guys are waiting for. It might be done by the time this podcast goes live. So best wishes, and let's see how that goes. And do you guys have any final words for Hackathon readers?
Can I shill something real quick?
Of course.
Shameless shill. All right. So first of all, I am not a financial advisor. But here's my pitch, all right? Here's my pitch. You heard about rope. You heard about small. The next big thing is pub token. Yes, I'm already farming it. Yes, all the cool people are already farming it, but it's not too late to get in on pub token. There's a group of Telegram users that are going to be really happy with me for that, so I just had to throw that out. I am now a yield farming degen. I will take that title, but it is something I've fallen into in the past couple of weeks, and I've embraced it wholeheartedly.
Add my own disclaimer to it first before you go it on. Hackathon does not endorse the views of the and go for it.
Okay, so I'm only allowed to shill Upland, so I'll go back. All the listeners, check out Upland, and when you do so, please, first of all, make sure to check out our community on Discord, and make sure to check some of the user-generated content around Upland, which is pretty cool and fun. Our community is lots of fun, great people, always willing to help. If you start out, they will bombard you with gifts and presents, and you'll make status in the game in no time if you join the community. And then one last thing, make sure to join via somebody's referral code that will give you a bonus with your first purchase. So Upland never discounts. Apex is never discounted. It's always $1 equals 1,000 Apex. But if you come through a referral, and there are a lot of referrals out there, if you check our user-generated content, then you'll get a 50% bonus on your first purchase. That's it.
Thank you for that, Idan, and we will have the links to your platform and to some of these programs that you mentioned at the bottom of the episode, so it would be easier for users to find that out. And with that, thank you, Reza, and thank you, Idan, for being on the show. We'd be happy to have you guys back sometime soon.
Awesome,
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.